How do we decolonize our minds? How do we rediscover ourselves again, but not through the lens of colonialism or imperialism?
A lot of our names are inspired by our traditional deities. So Osa, which is Edo State, any name that has Osa in it, they're paying homage to the Edo deity. The Babalawos are dying out. It's normally a calling. And a lot of the reason why our traditional religions are not well known today is because they were displaced by the introduction of the Abrahamic religions. So that's Christianity, Islam, and to a certain extent, Judaism.
Hello friends, you're welcome. My name is Ferdy Adimefe and I've been meaning to do this for a while. I'm a storyteller and today I'm starting the very first episode of my podcast. Stories are powerful, so I love to read novels, and a novel and a good coffee, it's how I get my epiphanies. I love a great film, but one thing that connects everything is stories. But I also love conversations with interesting people who are working journeys, because when I see those stories and I see their journey, their high points and their low points and everything in between, we get to learn. So this first episode, I have my very good friend here with us. Someone I have been a fan of her work, her first novel, and now she has a second one. I'll soon get to read it. Her name is Kome. Kome, you're welcome to today's podcast, and you're my first guest. How do you feel being the first guest?
Thank you, Ferdy. I very much appreciate the opportunity. I feel very excited. I didn't realize I was the first ever guest till I got here today, and so I'm honored.
Yeah. So I love that you're an author, but I also wanted to check from your growing up years. Is there a book you would mention, or a movie, or something that you could point to and say, okay, this was a defining piece for me growing up? Any book stood out for you in a very defining way?
I read a lot of books when I was younger, which I think is what led to my love of writing. But if I had to pick one book that maybe changed my life, so it's by an American author called Bill Bryson, and he writes a lot of nonfiction, and he writes on a variety of subjects. And I started buying one book after another. And it had never occurred to me that one person could write so many books on so many different topics. It just opened my eyes to the possibilities of the world of literature. And I would say that it was an inspiration for the author I am today.
Interesting. So just even talking about your evolution, a lawyer turned writer, did you ever see that coming?
I did not. So I did law at university. About halfway through, I realized it wasn't really for me, but I finished it. I even did a master's in it, at which point I said, okay, I think that's enough law. And then I ended up going into healthcare. So I worked in public healthcare, worked in private healthcare, and I lived in the UK for about 20 years. And it wasn't until I moved back in Nigeria in 2018 and I started working for family businesses. And that gave me more control over my time. And it gave me the space to breathe. And that's when my creative energy started coming out. So I do actually think if I'd stayed in the UK, I may not have written either of those books. So there was something about the environment, about Lagos, that actually brought it out.
I don't know that many will agree that Lagos is where you get your creative juice stimulated, but I just wanted to talk about something you just said now, coming back home.
Yes.
In the last 10, 20 years, we have seen like mass migration.
Yes.
So I find a lot of people leave Nigeria to Australia, to Canada, Europe, and even in the US. But you came back.
I did.
Why did you?
Yeah. I had that question from a lot of people. So I think for me, the number one reason actually was family. So both of my parents are here. My sister is here. My brother's still in the UK. And it just felt, I used to come once a year for Christmas. And every year I came, my parents were looking a little bit older, a little bit grayer. And I felt like I was missing out on their lives. And a lot of my friends had moved back. It just got to a point where I weighed up the pros and cons. I looked at my life in the UK, which was a good life. I had a good career. I had my own place, but I wasn't happy. I could feel that I wasn't happy, and I felt like I could be happier. And it felt like I was living my life the wrong way around. So I spent most of the year looking forward to Christmas, 2 weeks in Lagos, back to the UK for the other 50 weeks, sorry. And I just thought, let me try it the other way. If it doesn't work out, I can come back. And so that was the beginning of the idea. So I actually spoke to my family about it. I spoke to a few friends about it. Most were discouraging. They didn't think it was a good idea. But actually a surprising number of people said, you know what, I think you would flourish here. Give it a try. That's just give it a try. And I'm one of these people where I'd rather try something and it doesn't work out than not to try at all.
Kome, I think interesting, the way you spoke about family, doing things for family.
Yes.
I know people who go abroad to say, I'm going to work to send money to family. And for you, it seemed like spending time was the what was important to you. But can you tell us about your growing up years? How was it for you growing up and just being able to have that affection and love of your dad and your mom and your sibling in such a way that sacrificing dollar jobs for possibly naira job was it a struggle for you? Do you struggle with that?
Two very good questions. So what I'll start with is that I will acknowledge that I had a certain amount of privilege growing up. So I came from two good families. We didn't really struggle for anything. We had regular trips abroad, summer holidays, Christmas holidays, and went to good schools. And I think that gave me a very good foundation. So I was a confident child. I believed in myself. My parents believed in me. And I think that gave me the strength to really just be who I could be, even from quite a young age. In terms of the family aspect, I think, again, back to that privilege, which I acknowledge, working for two family businesses has really helped with the security aspect. I think if I'd come back and had to look for a job, it may have changed my experience here. It may even have changed the amount of spare time I had to devote to my creative projects. But I have two very understanding parents. And because my father is also a prolific writer, my mother has written her own book, and she works a lot in education and reform. So they both saw the importance of what I was trying to do, of the legacy I was trying to create, the work I was trying to share with the world. So they supported me in that way. And yes, I've definitely taken a significant pay cut. Yes, I can't even pretend. But I'm not worried about. I know the money will come because I'm doing something I believe in. I'm fulfilling. Yes, I believe that the money will come. So I'm not worried at this point in time.
Okay, about your sister's accident, and I think it's something that was a shock for everyone. And I'm listening to your mom's side of the story, going to spend almost a year or two in the UK.
Yes.
And then coming back. How did that affect you in any way and your faith in God?
Yes, it was very difficult for the whole family. Having a member of the family suffer a catastrophic accident like that permanently changes their life, it affects the whole family because you're now moved into a position of you have to support, you're encouraging, you're accompanying to hospital visits. She actually had rehab for, I think, 3 to 4 years in the UK and the US. And my mother did a lot of that, so kudos to her. But in terms of the impact on me and my faith, you definitely feel angry for a while because you're saying, why my sister? Why our family? So many people get into road traffic accidents and walk away without a scratch. Why couldn't she have been one of them? Or why couldn't it have been a minor injury? Why did it have to be something so devastating that she lost the use of her legs, But you eventually come to a place of peace. And even though her life has changed, there are a lot of positives that have come with it. She's now an advocate for disability access, disability inclusion. We have also become advocates as well by association. We're all now more aware, and the impact it's had on our family, it's brought us closer together because we had to come together. It would either have driven us apart completely, but thankfully we went the other way, and our faith, our love, our support for each other, we came together.
Just even being with her and assisting and in being around, how have you seen the healthcare system and even just living in Nigeria for people that are differently enabled?
Differently able, yes.
Differently able,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
How's that been for you? Just because, again, from architecture to a school curriculum, literally, it doesn't seem to have that diversity or room for differently able people.
Yes.
So what have you taken away from it, and what do we need to change as a culture?
Yes, I mean the difference between the UK and US and Nigeria is really night and day. It's actually almost sad to see. So the UK, US, they've gone the extra mile to make public spaces accessible, adaptable. So the public transport systems that are enabled, because it's not just people using wheelchairs, it's also people who have mobility issues, people who are over a certain age, people who have had illnesses that affected their mobility, people that have different challenges. And they've just gone the extra mile to make public spaces accessible for everyone, regardless of ability. In Nigeria, unfortunately, we're still very much focused on the able-bodied. Being able-bodied here is still the status quo. So you can go to any public space you can think of, and looking at it from the perspective of somebody who has a disability, it's difficult to even get in the front door. If you manage to get in the front door, it's difficult to access the bathrooms. If you're able to get into the bathrooms, it's difficult to use the facilities. It's difficult to get into the hotel room. It's difficult to get into the meeting room. So at every stage, it feels like there is a lack of awareness that there are people other than able-bodied people who will need to access these spaces. So we do have a long way to go, and it's at all levels. So from the governmental level to the people who are commissioning the projects, the architects who are drawing up the plans, the builders who are implementing the plans. I would actually say every project needs somebody like a disability consultant to come in and assess and say how accessible is what you are creating.
So I think I know that there is diversity and inclusion, but I don't know if the thinking around diversity and inclusion touches on this at the level that we're all black, so it's not like our diversity is, but we still need to have a conversation around diversity as well, which is around how we hire, because for a lot of differently able people, I don't know that there are enough jobs that is designed for them, and just even seeing, but there are policies.
Yes.
And I do know we have quite a bit of policy to drive some of these things, but we're not seeing that other side. Why is that? Why do you think we're not seeing a lot of it crystallize in the way we design, in the way we live?
Yes. What I can say is Lagos State has done a lot in that aspect. Yes, they have a whole, they have a whole section, they have a whole department, and they're doing their best. But I think the awareness needs to be nationwide. Every state needs to have the same level of regulation, and they have to be consequences for not implementing them. Right now, there are no consequences.
Right.
And part of that diversity and inclusion is understanding that there are different people living different lives, and they need to be able to enjoy their lives to their fullest. So I would say in terms of, I can relate it to healthcare in general in this country, which still has a long way to go, but has come a long way. So in terms of sensitization programs, I think we could do a lot of that. We could have nationwide programs. We could have people going into rural communities, because a lot of the disabled people are not visible in our society. My sister is one of the most visible disabled people. So when she goes out, people stare, which contributes to her uncomfortableness with going out, because they've never seen somebody just out and about enjoying their life in their wheelchair. You don't see it. The closest you come is maybe somebody begging at the traffic lights. And you look at them and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so awful. You give them what you can give them. But in terms of a disabled person being out and about, living their lives, we don't have that. So I think we need to do a lot more of that visibility. So my sister is part of various groups, and mostly on WhatsApp, and they support each other. But I think they're too much like silos. So they're working in isolation. And I think we need to find a way to bring the different groups together so that we can create, as you said, that mass awareness, so that people are starting to engage and are starting to understand that we have to consider more than just our immediate circles.
Okay, I think that's very, very interesting, because Africa, I remember a friend of mine was telling me that we always make the mistake to compare Lagos to 35 states.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that he feels we're doing ourselves a disservice when we compare Lagos to 35 states, because Lagos has such opportunities.
Yes.
So that Lagos should be comparing itself to Lisbon.
Yes.
To New York.
Yes.
To Joburg.
Yes.
It should compare itself to global cities that it aspires to be. And so if it's okay, other states don't even have laws, we've tried, we have an office, I put someone in that office, see how we're driving that. But I'm also just thinking about across Africa and trying to also find out what you think, because I'm very passionate about Africa. I'm passionate about African storytelling, and I have had the privilege to travel and just also seeing the way that the potential of Africa is still not scratched at all.
Yeah.
We're talking about one of the richest parts of the world, with the highest level of poverty that we are dealing with.
Yes.
But in a sense, for you to return home to Africa, you must have a sense of possibility. What do you see? Can you paint a picture of what you think Africa can be? Yeah. I think a lot of the people that I want to reach with our podcast are people who are dreamers, who believe fundamentally that we have a call to build the continent, to to paint a picture of possibilities. And I see you as one of the people already living that reality.
Yes.
And through your books, you're already changing minds and hoping to communicate something very germane.
Yes.
So I would like you to really share your vision for Africa and your thoughts about Africa.
Thank you. Thank you. So, of course, when I moved back, it was 50-50. But the longer I've been here, I acknowledge that there are challenges with living in Nigeria. But there is a sense of optimism that I haven't been able to shake. And I believe Nigeria and Africa, I believe we can do very big things. We have the manpower, we have the knowledge, and I believe we have the audacity to do it. It's a matter of almost breaking free of historical constraints and these negative stereotypes, which are not completely unfounded, but can drain people, and it can take the energy out of that willingness to do something different, to build a legacy. In terms of Africa, I've had the pleasure of meeting people from different parts of Africa, from when I lived in the UK to even being here, because Lagos is a very cosmopolitan city. If you go out, you meet a lot of people from different parts of Africa. And the one thing I know is that a lot of people enjoy coming to Nigeria. They enjoy coming to Lagos. They like the energy. They like the culture. They like the creativity. Our creative sector has gone global through the music, through art. I actually know somebody who was in Stockholm the other week, and she was shopping. And she said the whole time she was shopping, they were playing Afrobeats, back to back in Sweden. So this is soft power. And this is how America actually has achieved the status of world domination. Everything it produces through its culture paints America under a very rosy light. It has an effect. So I think we almost need to take charge of our narratives, take charge of our stories, and share what we know to be good about Nigeria, share what we know to be good about Africa. Because especially in the news, international news, they also perpetuate the stereotypes of every time they're talking about Africa, it's about a war, they're showing a child with flies on them, to the point that there's some people, they don't know we have cities. I've had people ask, do you have internet in Africa? As if Africa is a country, So some of us are living very good lives here, and it's possible to do it. I acknowledge there's a lot of hardship in a lot of parts of Africa, a lot of parts of Nigeria, but it is possible to live a good life. And I believe it's possible to build something meaningful. So in terms of speaking to people and saying, what can you do? Whatever your idea is, don't allow people to discourage you. Don't allow people to talk you out of it. Yes, maybe to appease your parents, you may do the law, engineering, medicine, but don't allow that to take you away from whatever your hope or dream is. Take the time to sit with yourself and say, what idea do I have that can contribute to Nigeria rising, can contribute to Africa rising, and execute it, go after it. Yes, you may make mistakes. The first version may not look like the final version, but you're doing it, and you'll be surprised who will come out. You will find your audience, you will find your tribe. You'll be surprised who will come forward and say, I like what you're doing, can we work together? Or how can I amplify? How can I support your work? And I think that is the best way to get Nigeria to where we want it to be, to get Africa to where we want it to be. Like, yes, all these difficulties are happening, but there's still beauty in the ashes, and we have to find it, we have to support it, and we have to encourage people who have the know-how and who have the energy to execute it.
So, I love when you said take charge of our narrative.
Yeah.
America is one country that is built on storytelling, and people don't understand how powerful they literally dominated the world with Hollywood.
Absolutely.
And through their imagination, most of us were even colonized.
Yes.
I remember I knew so much about America even before there were parts of Nigeria I wasn't sure I knew as much as I knew America.
Yes.
And it was just partly the way the stories were told.
Yes.
In your book, The Nigerian Gods,
yes,
you did something that I would consider very bold, right? Going back in time, I don't know how many gods there are, but just even looking at the way the Western world, they've taken these stories and what they've done with them is to create them into series, feature films.
Yes.
And if you look at the Greek mythology?
Yes.
Literally, they've reimagined all of those ideas. I want you to tell us about the writing process. Why did you jump into this? And I would also want you to share your discoveries with us.
Of course, thank you. So I actually read a book called American Gods by a British author many years ago. And in that book, it's a work of fiction, but he takes the deities or gods and goddesses from different religions around the world. So Hindu, Greek, Irish, even like Native American, and he treats them as characters in the book and they interact with each other. And I found that so fascinating because a lot of them I knew because I've always had an interest in world religions, but a lot of them I was reading about for the first time. And it just got me thinking how I didn't know the traditional gods in my own ethnic group, let alone the ethnic group of other people. So I just thought, what if I started to put together some information about the different traditional religions? And at first it was more a project for myself, just to see how much I could find out. Then as I began to work on it, I realized that it was important because a lot of it was tied up with our culture. And a lot of the reason why our traditional religions are not well known today is because they were displaced by the introduction of the Abrahamic religions. So that's Christianity, Islam, and to a certain extent, Judaism. We have Judaism in Nigeria in at least 3 ethnic groups. And once they came in, to push out the traditional religions, they had to paint them as bad, evil. And because they brought a lot of benefits, especially Christianity, good education, good healthcare, good jobs, a lot of Nigerians were only too ready to discard what they believed and to embrace the new religion. They took on Christian names. Their children were baptized and so on. And yes, Christianity brought a lot of good to Nigeria, but we lost a lot of our culture. We lost a lot of our history. And now that book, Nigerian Gods, I just wanted to reacquaint Nigerians with some of our history. Because a lot of Nigerians, because of Marvel especially, they're familiar with Loki, Thor. They can tell you the whole Greek god pantheon. They know all this information. And it's somehow that's okay. But if you want to start talking about the Orishas, or you want to start talking about Eshu, suddenly people are like, I don't want to talk about that. Okay, sorry. But just to give an example, because even Eshu in Yoruba mythology is not the devil. It's actually more of a trickster god, like Loki. So he's meant to be, cunning and wily, but he's like a patron god of some different areas. So the traditional Yoruba practitioners don't fear Eshu.
Yeah, so I also found something very interesting.
Yes.
In one of the books I read, even the Igbos did not have a word for the devil.
Yes.
The devil did not.
It wasn't even a concept.
Yeah, it wasn't a concept. They didn't have a word for the devil.
Yes.
In fact, what the Christians call Ekwensu today was not necessarily the devil.
Exactly.
It was actually interpreted as sort of like a warrior.
Yes.
Of some sort.
Yes.
But I think because he had a dark side and he was a little unloved.
Yes.
It was the closest to what they could use to paint a picture.
Exactly.
Right. So the cosmology of the African was almost integrating our idea of God as the very source of life, but that we experience everything through him.
Yes.
So it wasn't so much about there was a negative idea or a force that was taking us on.
Yes.
And we had to live in consciousness of killing this negative force.
Yes.
Right. That became a little foreign.
Exactly.
In a sense to the black man. But I just really think that in that book, being a Christian and doing a research into African gods, I could sense a bit of a tension. How do you wrestle with that tension?
Yes. So what I had to do was I had to approach it from the perspective of an objective researcher. I had to see it as a fact-finding mission, which was, this is information that could be lost to time. And what I found very interesting was that a lot of the historical research, 18th century, 19th century, was researchers who came in from outside the country just out of pure curiosity. So a lot of British researchers, American, Portuguese. I mean, I was reading articles from like 1910, and I was trying to decipher, because they were photocopied, scanned onto the internet. And I was just thankful for the people who took the time to put this information on the internet. Yeah. There's so much information on the internet that I thought I would have to do a lot more in-person interviews, but I was able to get a good 80% of what I needed from the internet, and the other 20% was then talking to people from different parts of the country. But back to your question, I really just had to try to be as objective as possible. And I wanted to make sure I was giving a certain level of respect to the other religions, because even till today, there's traditional practitioners. So that, especially I will use Yoruba people as an example, because they are multi-faith. So in one household, you can have a grandmother who is a traditional practitioner, then her son, who is maybe the father of his children, will be Christian. Then he married a Muslim, and she's still a practicing Muslim. And then the children are now aware of all three, and they just coexist, and they don't see an issue with it. So in a way, they found a way to make it work. So I'm not saying that that's how it can work across the country, but it's just something to be aware of, that there's a way to coexist. And we have to, because we're seeing what religious tensions can do, ethnic tensions, all through Nigeria. We see what it can cause. And if we're going to move forward as one country, we have to find a way to embrace each other, Christian, Muslim, whatever you want to, whatever you identify as, whatever you practice as a faith, you have to find a way to live with your neighbor. You cannot say that my neighbor is a Christian and he lives in Kano, so if there's tensions, we're going to do this and that. We have to find a way to make it work.
This is interesting. I feel like in what you spoke about, we threw away the baby and the bathwater.
Yes.
So there are good parts of the African spirituality and African culture that today I think we may have lost some essence and identity in just trying to compensate. But in a sense, just how do we decolonize our minds? Because even when we talk about our own lens of Africa, we always come from the 1914
Yes.
or the 1885 Berlin Conference.
Yes.
So our boundaries, our borders, it's really what we think or know about ourselves, but written mostly by white researchers or white people.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if there are implicit biases that they may have filtered in, but how do we rediscover ourselves again, but not through the lens of colonialism or imperialism? So that really rediscovering ourselves in the way that we can come into a place of true power, authentic power.
Yes. There was definitely an implicit bias, and a lot of the historical research that I read, some of it I couldn't even, it was very good, but I couldn't use it because of the language they were using about Nigerians. It was very racist and very stereotypical, because their expectation is they were thinking they were going to find basically little more than animals. So they were very surprised to find developed farmlands, developed cities. When the Portuguese found Benin City, they were astonished. The roads had street lights. They were paved. They had carriages, and they couldn't believe it. They could not believe it. And they said, this is actually nicer than some of the places we have back in Portugal. So their confusion and their astonishment came through in what they were writing, which I found very interesting. But in terms of decolonizing our minds, a lot of it is actually we have to educate ourselves. We have to engage with our history. We have to. Because if you don't know your history, if you don't know where you come from, anybody can come and try and tell you who you are, try and tell you something that may not be true. And if you're not educated, if you don't know, you will accept it. You will swallow it whole. So we have to understand. I know so much more about Nigeria now than I did before I wrote Nigerian Gods. It's actually astonishing. I think it actually helped me to feel more Nigerian.
Yeah.
Now, from names, a lot of names, because I can tell where you are from in Nigeria. Because a lot of our names are inspired by our traditional deities. So Osa, which is Edo State, any name that has Osa in it, they're paying homage to the Edo deity. In the Shekiri, which is Orishe, a lot of the names have Orishe. Ogene, which is Urobo, Isoko.
Yes.
So we are paying homage in different ways. So parts of us, we're trying to hold on to our culture. So we have to actively go out there. We have to actively engage with the elders that we have left, especially in the rural communities, because they know. I think when I was doing the research into the Yoruba chapter, the babalawos are dying out because it is something you are. It's a failing practice because it's iyalawos as well, which is the female version, because it's normally a calling. And when it was all villages, you would be picked, or you would be chosen, or you would be called.
But are there things in your Christian faith that you've wrestled with or learned that allow for you to really look through the lens of the African spirituality and see beauty? Look to Buddhism, see beauty. Look to Islam, see beauty. And truth is truth, no matter where it is found. And you're not allowing yourself to hate people because of what they believe, but allowing yourself to transcend hate and love people regardless of their faith or gender. I mean, was that something that led you to this version? And I wanted to know if there are things you've learned that put you in the place of power.
Yeah, I love this question because it really speaks to the heart of what it means to be a human being. Because first and foremost, before everything else, we're human beings. And the truth is that the world would be in a much better place if we were able to break free of a lot of our pre-existing notions and our pre-existing concepts. So as a Christian and doing this research and, writing this book, I would say that the biggest challenge was, as you said, unlearning some things. So you have to approach it from almost a point of, these are people, they believe something else. As you said, truth is truth, love is love. You have to start with that as your core concept, because after that, everything becomes a lot simpler.
Yeah.
So I had to do some internal work. I really had to. I had to sit with myself. I had to sit with my faith and say, am I going to allow, as you said, am I going to allow the dogma to prevent me from seeing the humanity of somebody else? You have to get past that. That's the first. And especially, I would say, in Nigeria, where we can have almost like a very tunnel vision version of faith, where it doesn't allow for other people practicing other faiths or your specific, because even within Christianity, we have the different branches. So we have Protestant, we have Baptist, we have fundamental, we have Pentecostal, and so we even have different versions within that. So we have to find a way to make all of that work. I had to unlearn, I would say maybe intolerance. I had to unlearn intolerance. I had to unlearn almost, I would say, I'm just trying to think of the best way to say it. I would say that was the first. I had to unlearn intolerance. I had to embrace understanding other people. I had to hold space for other people. And in talking to people from the different parts of Nigeria, because everybody believes that what they believe is the right one. And either everybody is right or everybody is wrong. And because I've always been interested in world religions, I think that also helped me to be open-minded. For example, I find Buddhism fascinating. The way they prioritize meditation, the way they prioritize enlightenment, doing that internal work is another way of following that process, regardless of what faith you practice. Yeah. So if you're seeking to understand yourself, you're seeking to understand others, that's the same foundation of almost any religion you can think of. If you're looking to love yourself, you cannot love other people unless you love yourself. So you have to search within yourself. You have to understand what you like, what you don't like, what you can tolerate, what you cannot tolerate. And you have to really get to a place of peace and a place of understanding. Until you do that, you're not going to be able to interact with people in a way that you should.
You know, the interesting aspect is, I also love what you said about just learning to choose love. One of the things I found about Christianity was when I was in my conservative era, that this was campus, I was actually very, very militant about my faith.
Yes.
If you didn't believe like I do, I don't know that we have a lot in common. And you're my friend until we start talking about God.
Yes.
And I realized that, no, you can't believe that.
Yes.
I have no context of a world outside my reality. But I remember sitting down one day and thinking to myself, my Muslim friends are Muslims first because they're born into a Muslim home. And I think, yes, I'm a Christian first because I'm born into a Christian home. So what will make me different? And just even understanding that, okay, so everybody else is going to die and go to hell because they will never get to know God. And how sad for them.
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't know how to live in that world.
Yes.
And, you know, one of the things I stumbled on was a scripture that says that the truth comes to set free. And I realized the litmus test to know if you're learning something that is true,
yes,
is how fearful you are.
Yes.
That truth and fear are not, they don't coexist.
No.
So the more truth you're embracing,
yes,
the less fearful you are of other people, of other religion, and the more empathy you have for people.
Exactly.
The more love.
Exactly.
So I realized I spent time studying and being an apologetics.
Yes.
Knowing about the Bible, arguing with everyone.
Yes.
And feeling so passionately resentful of some people.
Yes.
Then I studied Jesus.
Yes.
And everything started to change. In fact, it was when I put away the Bible for a second and said, okay, guys, let me put away what I think I know and pick the Bible for myself.
Yes.
And let me just read it as though I didn't bring my bias. And let me read it as though I'm not bringing my preconceived ideas. And I started to look at him. And interestingly, I remember one of my friends telling me that when you study Christ, Jesus, and you study the Buddha, you find a lot of parallel that these people were about love.
Yes.
About love your neighbor.
Yes.
But when you now put religion, you realize they differ.
Yes.
This one becomes weaponized, and then we have all the denominations.
Yes.
And you know, the interesting aspect was how Jesus started to teach about God, and he said, you know, the Greek and the Romans had the idea of God in the sky.
Yes.
The Jews had a temple where they carried the Ark of God. And, you would think that Jesus would be like, okay, go to the temple, you'll find God. Or you just pray to the celestial God and you find him. But he said, in as God is omnipotent, which means they were not right.
Yes.
Or God was not limited to that idea. In fact, he said they were right in the way that they could say it, but God's greatest revelation was to discover God as an indwelling presence. And you have to really learn to come home to God who is at home in you.
Yes.
And there he said, I, my Father, are one.
Yes.
And that was where I got the concept of union.
Yeah.
And it said, as I am one with God, you become one with me. And when we say Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, we're not comparing Christianity versus Islam.
No.
Because guess what? Neither of them existed.
Yes.
So he wasn't saying Christianity was the way, Islam was not the way. I think we get into that battle. What he was saying, it was the way of grace.
Yes.
The way of love. That once you discover that God is the way, you're saved, you're loved, that's it. And then everything else changes. So we're not thinking that, okay, Islam is, everyone is dead, nobody belongs.
Yes.
Buddhist, nobody belongs. And I really think this is a tough conversation for Christians because we've thrived on an exclusive position, just not being able to question certain biases we inherited and carry on. And part of why a lot of Christians are leaving church, or many children are quitting on Christianity, is not because they're quitting on God, but they're quitting on the idea of God that they have been boxed into, that makes them feel like I have a privilege of being a Christian and half the world gets lost. And they're fighting tension with a lot of ideas of God in the Old Testament, ethnic cleansing, genocide, and all of those things. People want it to make sense. And it was when I started to embrace the idea that, okay, Jesus was about love. I can't find a part where he killed anyone, right? And he didn't say, please kill, like he was about mercy, mercy, mercy.
Absolutely.
Right? And I want to check with you in terms of, are there practices today that you've embraced that have put you in a place where you're more alive and more present in the world?
Yes.
Where you're present to people around you, you're present in the world in the way that you're loving and challenging assumptions. Because if this podcast is about reinforcing our myth and reinforcing our biases or prejudices, I'm not called. The idea is, I'm hoping a Christian is listening and saying, okay, how do I unlearn hate?
Yes.
And start loving people wherever they are,
100%.
regardless of how I differ with them. And I think if I've achieved that in this episode, we've won.
100%.
So I would want you to walk us through any practice that you think you've embraced in the 21st century that have put you to become more present, even in the world today.
Yeah, thank you. I can think of three. The first one I would say would be prayer/meditation. So depending on what faith you practice, because whether you're doing it by yourself or in communion with other people, there's something about taking time away from the hustle and bustle of the world. Whether you're doing it in nature, whether you're doing it in the privacy of your room, whether you go on a retreat, but just taking time to sit with yourself, sit with your faith, just sit with your thoughts and just reflect, observe what is happening within you, what has happened with your month, what has happened with your year. You almost have to do a strategic session with yourself. And that's what I see meditation as. You're going within yourself, you're becoming still, you're seeking solitude, and it's just helping you to rebalance from within. So I'll say that's the first thing. The second thing was I tried to practice radical acceptance. Now what that is no matter the situation, no matter what is going on, you accept it for what it is. Not what you hope it is, not what you think it is, not what you pray it will be, what it actually is, what is happening in front of you, what is the person saying, how does it make you feel? And what that does, it helps you to process your emotions. It helps you to stay honest with yourself, and it helps you to be honest with the people around you. Because it's very easy, it's easy to disbelieve what is happening in front of your eyes. Because for different reasons, whether conditioning or it's somebody you honor, you love and respect, so they wouldn't say it like that. But if they are saying it like that, you have to accept it. How does it make you feel? Why are they saying that? Are you going to challenge them about it? Are you going to let it go? So you have to just accept what is happening so you can process your emotions, work it through, and it doesn't become a source of stress or suffering for you. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, I try to practice active gratitude. So I work in my day job is project management, and I work on a lot of complex projects. And what that means is every day is different. You could be dealing with somebody in a different time zone, somebody with different priorities. You could be dealing with large teams, small teams, one person maybe who's a bit difficult, but you have to find something to be grateful for. And there's always something. So on the most difficult day, in the darkest hour, try and find something to be grateful for, and you'll be surprised how many things start coming to your mind, and it will lighten your mental load in that moment or on that day. And it's just a way, again, of reframing the narrative, reframing what is going on with you and changing your focus. So you may have had a bad morning for whatever reason. It doesn't make it a bad day. You can say, okay, you know what? This happened this morning. This was difficult, but at least this happened. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. And okay, from 12 noon, we're starting again. And it's going to be a better day. So it's just a way. So all three practices are just ways of recentering, rebalancing, and just being able to get a hold of yourself so that you're engaging with the people around you and with the world around you in the healthiest way possible.
Wow, well, there's a lot you just said there. I will pick up a bit on radical self-acceptance, but in just even thinking about how the human person today is a spiritual being, and it's not that you become spiritual when you become a Christian, or you become spiritual when you become a Buddhist, or when you become a Muslim. I mean, is that a spirituality is who you are. We cannot make water wet. We're all designed with that God connection, that capacity to love, to know God that is within us. And the interesting aspect was something I stumbled on the Bible as well when Paul was writing. And Paul said, this is a mystery. And when you hear something called mystery, it's very tricky.
Yes.
It means that there is a catch here. It's not just on the surface of things.
Yes.
And he said, hidden in every man is Christ. And in that moment, it clicked in my head. Now, what Paul wants us to think about ourselves, it's to reimagine ourselves, not just as a person, but as a God presence.
Yes.
Like Jesus said, I am the Christ.
Yes.
And, Paul made a distinction that there is Jesus and Christ. While both coexisted in the person of Jesus Christ, Christ was the God dimension. Jesus was the first century Jew that was born.
Yes.
Now, Jesus died, Christ resurrected him.
Yes.
And what he was saying, that Christ did not monopolize
Yes.
and made only to himself the Christ presence.
Yes.
But we are called Christians because we are all Christ presences.
Yes.
Or presences. Christ presence in the world today.
Yes.
So the beauty of it is learning to come to life with the awareness that you're lived in being, and that being that Christ in your form, we are all expressions of Christ. And I don't know that Christianity has allowed for us to make that connection the way it should. I mean, the Western Christianity is not always big on that, because it comes with a sense that man is a problem to be solved. Man is an original sin. Is an original sinner, and there is man, so there is retribution, there's hell and punishment.
Yes.
Now that doesn't make for a healthy living, because why would I want to spend an eternity with a God who I'm afraid of if I don't first know him as a father? And Jesus didn't start with God as a judge.
No.
He actually started with God as a father. Like he said, our Father.
Yes.
He didn't describe heaven as a destination.
Yes.
He said heaven is also an indwelling place. Like he was very counterintuitive.
Yes.
And if we begin to rediscover everything about the way he thought about God, he actually did not even describe sin as a crime to be punished.
Yes.
He actually says, I'm a great physician. I came to the sick, because he felt like human condition was a trauma being. Humans have been living in this attention of trying to learn and learn. So in the practices of our growth, we all have traumas.
Yes.
I mean, Nigeria in itself, growing up in Nigeria, seeing all the hardship can very well build an unhealthy level of trauma in us.
Oh, yes.
And in the research I read by the active an American research team, they said there is something called acute childhood stress.
Yes.
And that it's actually about 75% of the people in America are living with acute childhood stress.
Wow.
So you have a situation where somebody was born in a condition where dad wasn't there,
Yes.
mom was there. Now dad was here now, mom was gone.
Yes.
Or dad was present, but dad wasn't emotionally present.
Yes.
Or dad was physically present but abusive. Or dad was not abusive but he was alcoholic. Or dad was dealing with mental illness, he was bipolar. We didn't know who he was one moment or the next. So you have all of those things. In learning to love ourselves, we need to heal. And that journey to healing is something that our culture stigmatizes, right? We cast and bind the devil, but
Yes.
our problems are so. Yeah, it's just the traumas, the patterns, the conditioned mind. I wanted you to speak to, in a sense, what you've learned from healing from trauma and learning to give yourself the love that is required to fully inhabit your being and your place, and to create not just your own space in the world, but spaces for others. It takes a healed person to become a healing presence.
Oh, yes.
Right. And I wanted you to speak to how that evolution has been for you.
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, we're all a product of nature and nurture.
Yeah.
So you're born with a certain number of genes, which will determine how you look, part of your character. But then there's also, once you get to a certain age, you also have a certain element of determination. You can also say, okay, this is how I grew up. This is the environment I experienced, whether positive or negative. But I'm now a young adult or an adult, and I can determine, or I can influence how I now go into the world and engage with the world. So when you're dealing with somebody who has a lot of trauma and they haven't yet started the work of healing, you can tell, because they're still causing harm to themselves and they're causing harm to people around them, and they may not even know they're doing it because they don't recognize it as harm, because that's how they were treated, and they may even think they're fine. And it may take an aha moment. It may take an interaction with a very healed person. It could be, the catalyst could be anything, but at some point they will have an experience that shows them that actually I may not be okay, or I may not be as okay as I thought I was. And I think it's important to understand that healing can take place on several levels. So what a lot of people do, you can think it's just the Western way, so just go to therapy or just go to church, but you can have a combination. So you can receive healing from the church, you can receive healing or from your mosque, you can receive healing from a therapist who is an objective third person who doesn't know your family or doesn't know the person that caused the harm to you. And you can also do some work yourself. So this can look like spending time in nature. It can look like interacting with other healed people. It can look like seeking out positive experiences that make you feel better about life. And so the main thing is, once you start that healing journey, you may not feel the benefits immediately, but at some point you will find it easier to navigate the world. You will find that things that used to send you into anger or tantrums don't have as much of an effect. You will find that you understand other people better and you're able to give them grace. You're able to give them empathy, because when you think about where you're coming from, you start to see that other people may also be coming from a place of difficulty, coming from a place of harm. So you can only meet somebody where they are. So if they are in an unhealed place, that is how they will treat you. That is how they will interact with you. And depending on where you are, you will either react with the same anger, the same fear, the same chaos, or if you've healed, you can look at them and you can see it. You can see the pain and you can have empathy for that pain. And that's what will give you the grace to either walk away or say, I have somebody that you can talk to that may help you. They may not receive that well, especially if they think they're fine, but it changes your whole outlook. It changed your whole outlook on life. And once you get to that place of peace, nothing is perfect in this life. You will still have difficult days. You will still have days, but you bounce back quicker. You're able to self-correct faster. You're able to interact with people in a more personable way.
Yes.
So the benefits are, and then you can actually start to see it on people. You can start to see people who haven't healed. And it can make you sad for them, but it like I said, it just gives you grace.
Well, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thinking about the idea that healing is not always linear.
No.
And it's a journey. I think living is healing.
Yes.
And growing.
Yes.
And, there's a statement in culture, we say, heal before you deal.
Yes.
I don't know what you would say to that, because the truth is that love comes calling.
Yes.
You say, I have anger issues, I want to wait till I deal before I deal.
Yes.
Right. But would you think that there is a sense that people are almost not ready for a relationship until they hit a particular threshold of healing? Or is about even having a sense of self-awareness to know that this is where I am right now, and the understanding and empathy that whoever I'm going to journey with would actually meet me where I am, like you said, and I'm meeting them at the level to which I've met myself.
Yes.
And I'm bringing all of that to the table in such a way that love allows for mutual understanding and acceptance.
Yeah.
Where I'm not a problem to be solved, but a person to be loved.
Yes.
And in that loving and working that journey, we're both reclaiming all of who we are, so that every relationship is a love work, and is also a healing work.
Yes.
But do you think that is still possible, or is very idealistic?
I think it's a blend of everything you said. I think we need love to survive. Everybody needs love to survive. And when if you're looking for love, I do think you have a responsibility to yourself and to the other person to have reached a certain level of healing, a certain level of self-awareness, and a certain level of even just kindness. Because if you're going to bring somebody into your space and you say, I want to engage with you, I want to be with you, I want to be around you as much as possible, you have to be coming with good intentions. You can't be coming in and trying to treat them badly, poorly, because if they have love at home, they don't need to come and find nonsense outside. So I think I think to have the healthiest version of the relationship possible, you have to have a certain level of healing. Now, I guess that's the idealistic portion of it, because the truth is there's a lot of people out here dating who maybe shouldn't be dating because they're hurting people and other people are being hurt in return. When I met my current partner, I'd taken 1 year off from dating because in Lagos, I had been dating around here and there, and I kept meeting people who I felt were not treating me well. And I was starting to feel jaded. I was starting to feel cynical. And because I'd done a certain...
Like you have too many standards, like the way you...
This is like I'm being too picky, or maybe I don't get it, or maybe I'm just... But I was like, no, because I had done a certain level of internal work, I said, no, this feels wrong. You are not treating me well. You are not emotionally available. And you are trying to gaslight me into thinking that I am not misunderstanding, because I know who I am, I know how I feel, and I know what I'm looking for. So that gave me the power to walk away from situations that were not serving me. And I thought to myself, you know what, I need to take a break. Otherwise, when I finally meet my person, I run the risk of being that jaded, cynical version of myself. And I also run the risk of treating them the way I've been treated. So I need to give myself the best chance and to give them the best chance. I took a break. I didn't know it was going to be a year, but it ended up being 1 year. And then I met the person I'm with now, and it has been wonderful. He's amazing. Like all the things I was looking for, he does it. I'm not begging for crumbs of love. He's just always thinking of how to make me happy and how to do good things for me. I would never have imagined that I could find this kind of relationship. And if I had allowed the people I was spending time with, or if I allowed even just the narrative
longer.
Yeah, I may have just ended up in a situation that would not have made me happy, but I would have thought, oh, this is good enough. But I was healed enough to know that I can do better than good enough. I want somebody who is going to make me the best version of myself, and I want to make them the best version of themselves, and we can be our best versions together.
Wow, Kome, this is interesting. I really love. So guys, there's love in Lagos. There's sometimes people have normalized so many trauma outcomes.
Yes.
That when they are treated badly, they are given the crumbs. They feel like this is what I can live with, because somewhere along the line, they have not given themselves self-acceptance and self-love enough and they settle.
Yes.
But in a sense, maybe there is a definition of love you have that allows for you to, close a chapter when it's neatly needing to close one and step into a new possibility. What is love to you?
I love that, because it is a skill to learn to let things go.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people hold on to things that either no longer serve them or are actively harming them, because there's fear there. There's fear of what happens after. There's a fear of being alone. There's a fear of not fulfilling society's expectations, parents' expectations. You might be a single lady at the age of 30 and you fall into a relationship that doesn't serve you, but you're thinking, I'm 30, what if I can't do better? What if this is the best I can do? And your parents are looking at you, his parents are looking at you, or your friends are like, when are you getting engaged? And next thing you know, you're walking down the aisle with somebody that deep down is not actually your person, but you think it's the best you can do. And then all the things that come after that, which is when you're not compatible on various levels, it leads to an unhappy relationship, and you're well trying to avoid that. So to me, love means being the best version of myself with the person. We're making up for each other's shortcomings. We're making up for each other's failings. We know there's going to be difficulties ahead, but we have enough love for each other. We have enough of an understanding of each other's characters that we know that we will weather it together. So for example, about just under a year into our relationship, his father passed away. And I actually thought he's going to break up with me, because losing a parent is so deep, it's so painful that a lot of people can't handle anything outside of it. And this is how I knew he was for me. It went the other way. He actually went out of his way to prioritize me during that time. He went out of his way to let me know that I was so precious to him and that he was thinking of me even in the middle of all the arrangements and the ups and downs of planning a funeral. And that's when I thought, my goodness, I think I've actually found my person, because it could have gone the other way. So for me, love it's a multitude of things, and I think on balance, you're looking for somebody who has your time. You're looking for somebody who understands how you're living your life, somebody who gets on with your family, they get on with your friends, they support you in what you're doing. Because even what I'm doing now, writing the books, my profile is going higher. There are a lot of Nigerian men who may not like that, because they're like, she's getting above herself, or you're too much but he is just supportive. And he just is like, look, I love your writing and I want more people to discover your writing. So it's about finding somebody who gels with you, So that for me, love is a multitude.
The interesting thing, it takes a self-assured someone to create a space where others can thrive in being who they are.
Exactly.
And but in wrapping up, 2 questions to bring us to a wrap on this one. You're a strong, assertive, hardworking, successful young lady.
Thank you.
And in the world today, there is all of the tension about feminism, patriarchy, where everyone is living to dismantle the other.
Yes.
People are looking at each other to the scope of a rifle, like, oh, that's patriarchy, oh, that's feminist.
Yes.
Right? Is there a place where, in a world where these things can exist, but not in a way that is weaponized? And in a sense, how can you, what can we paint as a picture that can help us heal from harmful beliefs and practices on both spectrum?
Yes.
That have taken away from our collective humanity.
Yes.
And our ability to be present to each other in love.
Yes. Ooh. I would have to say that this is where it comes back to seeing the humanity in another person. Because a lot of these gender wars that we're seeing now is because people who are trying to push certain narratives for their own benefit will push the feminism angle, they push the patriarchy angle, because there are different people benefiting from one or the other coming out on top. But the truth is, okay, you're talking about, but this is a woman, forget the overall, this is a woman that, let's say it's your sister. Would you want her to be treated a certain way? No. Would you want her to be able to have her own bank account? Yes. Would you want her to have a job? Yes. Would you want her to be able to marry somebody that she loves and will be happy with, instead of somebody that was chosen for her based on family or wealth? Yes. So when you have to humanize it, and you have to see the individuals within the forest. Same thing for the patriarchy. Okay, yes, overall, this is not good, but this is a man that you know. This is your cousin. Do you want him to feel like he can treat you like a doormat? No. Do you want him to feel like he has to carry the whole burden of the family's finances on his head? No, because that's stressful. Do you want him to feel like he can't share his emotions because he'll be seen as weak? No. So you have to see the person behind the concept. And I think that's the only way we can start to treat each other better. Because when you start seeing the people, the first step to being able to treat other people badly is dehumanizing them. That's how you can have concentration camps. That's how you can have unlawful deportation, because you are not seeing the story behind the person. You're seeing a mass of people who just have to be sent away or deported or disposed of. But each person has a family. They have a history. They have love. They had careers. So the more we see the humanity in each other, the more we can actually start to work together and not have these gender wars and not have these divisions. Whether it will actually happen, I don't know. But for me, that's my starting point, which is you have to see the person behind the concept.
Guys, see the humanity.
Exactly.
Come here. What would you say to your 17-year-old self if you were to meet her today?
I would tell her to be bolder. I would tell her to have more compassion for herself. And I would tell her to take more chances.
Someone be bolder, have compassion for yourself, take more chances.
Yeah.
If there is one question we should have asked you that we didn't, what would that be?
Wow. One question that you should have asked me. You can ask me about my new book, The Healthy Perfectionist.
Yeah.
That would be a good question.
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
The Healthy Perfectionist.
Yes.
Perfectionist is also a word that has also come with a lot of baggage.
Yes.
People see it as self-critical or critical of others.
Yes.
Is that book a reflection of you in any way?
There's a lot of me in it. The genesis of the book came from my life experiences. And even the introduction, I speak about some very personal experiences that I had in my youth that led to me being a perfectionist as I got older. And what happened, so it just started out as being in a home that was always neat, tidy, organized, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But as I got older, I wanted everything to continue being neat and tidy and organized. And then what used to be guidelines became a cage. And it has to be like this. Otherwise, I feel I've lost control. You have to do this in this exact order. Otherwise, you haven't done it properly. And it started becoming a barrier between me and other people and being able to connect with other people. So I had to reach a place of pain to understand that I cannot continue like this. So that's when I started doing more research into myself, into the way I saw the world. And I understood that what I had was perfectionism. And I was able to work my way out of it and find a way to be flexible, to find a healthier version of it. And that was what led to the book, which was, I need other people to know this. Because it's not whether you identify as a perfectionist or not, we all know people who behave a certain way because they were conditioned like that or they worked with somebody like that. So it's about understanding, because it happens, it's in families. There's perfectionism in families, in schools, in healthcare, in the workplace, in religion, in social media. So I'm just looking at each of those sectors, and I'm just helping people to see these are the intentions behind a lot of your actions, a lot of your unconscious behaviors. I want to make them conscious. And it speaks to mental health as well. Because if you're not engaging with the world in a healthy way, it affects your mental health. It affects your ability to function. So it's also to help people break free of some of their shackles as well, and say, actually, I see myself in parts of this book. And I also have some self-help. So I have some tips, I have techniques in there. I've got some workbooks so that you can actually work through it yourself. And every day you can say, this is how I'm going to make today better.
Correct. So all the perfectionists out there, there's something for you. I think your both books on Amazon.
As it's on Amazon, you can also get it through African Books Collective, that's internationally, and locally it's available from Roving Heights and Quintessence.
So I think you should be getting a bit more active on social media.
I have to get into so when I'm in between projects, I tend to be quite low key. But I'm slowly starting to learn how to lean into being more of an extrovert, and because I have to talk about the work. I have to talk about what I'm doing, because who else will?
Yeah. So I think you just plug in your social media handle, because I know millions will see this.
Okay.
And they know where to follow, just in case you want to experience the first book, which is the Nigerian Gods, and then this other one, which I'm here to get a copy.
You will get a copy.
I'm sure we're going to be having you sometime again, but let's have the social media.
Thank you.
Kome?
Yes. So on Instagram, it's Ms. Kome Otobo, MS Kome Otobo. On Twitter, or X, sorry, as it's now called, it's just Kome Otobo, Kome Otobo.
I'm sure we'll have it on the screen.
Yes.
Guys, this is a wrap for today. Thanks for being with us, and looking forward to the next episode.